Fair bit to discuss out of New South Wales. Two MPs from that state at a federal level, of course. Senator Andrew Bragg, and from the Labor Party, we have Matt Thistlethwaite. Gents, thanks both for your time. We've heard Labor calling for JobKeeper to return for a long time. It's not coming back, but it sounds pretty similar, Matt Thistlethwaite. What do you make of the support that's set to be announced this afternoon?
Well, we do need some support for particularly small businesses, Tom. I've been calling most of the small businesses in the community that I represent over the last couple of weeks, and I can tell you that plenty of them are in dire straits. They're struggling and they do need some form of support package. And it's got to be something that provides support for them to keep people in employment. So to tie the employees to the particular employer, as JobKeeper did. The second element of it that there needs to be in this package is that there needs to be protections for small businesses who are renting so that they don't face eviction if they can't pay their rents over the course of the coming weeks if this lockdown continues. Now, the government had that in place previously, but it was tied to JobKeeper. So it lapsed, those protections for tenants lapsed when JobKeeper ended. And I've written to the Premier today saying that the New South Wales government should reinstitute those protections for commercial tenants so that they can't be kicked out of their premises if they can't pay their rent over the coming weeks.
That was a big part of the initial lockdowns, of course, Andrew Bragg. If this one's going to roll on for weeks, it would be a pretty vital missing ingredient, wouldn't it? Should it be included?
Well, New South Wales has carried the can for Australia during the pandemic in terms of hotel quarantine and also the economic outcomes. So it's entirely reasonable that the Commonwealth would come to the table and support businesses that have been affected by government shutdowns. I mean, the principle here is if the government closes down your business, you need to be recompensed. I think rent relief, payments to businesses, payments to people should all be on the table. I'm particularly concerned about the impact on small business because I do think that big businesses can weather the storm much easier than small businesses.
And what about not being kicked out? What about the rent relief element?
Well, I mean, the rent relief agreement was an agreement between the Commonwealth and the states, but it was implemented by the states during the 2020 year of 2020. Again, I think it's something that should be on the table. I mean, if you are unable to trade, but you are forced to pay rent, I mean, that is manifestly unfair.
Right, but then there's someone who's got the loan book as well. So last time there was this sort of deal.
Well, that's why it all needs to be managed. That's why government needs to step in and manage it because the driver of all this is a government.
Which government?
Close down.
The federal government?
Well, the state government has closed down New South Wales on the health advice. And the question is whether or not the whole state needs to be closed down effectively as it has been. I mean, there are some parts of the state that have no or very little COVID.
Right, so New South Wales has gone too far and it's up to them to figure out a sort of rent relief plan. That's what you're saying?
Well, I think the state needs to justify why so much of Sydney and beyond is locked down at the moment. I mean, there are parts of Sydney which quite clearly need to be closed down because there's a lot of COVID circulating, but that is not the case in parts of Sydney and Greater Sydney.
Do you agree with that, Matt?
No, I don't. I accept the advice of the Chief Medical Officer and the government on this because the cases of community transmission have been increasing exponentially. And we've seen over the past couple of days, in particular areas, that the numbers have been increasing dramatically and it's now spread to places like Goulburn. So if you don't have these lockdowns, you can't stop and contain that community transmission. And that's the number that we've got to get down. We've got to get that number of community transmission down to close to zero again before you can even consider opening up.